Well, we all have to drink water, but you know one thing, water is becoming scarce by the day, and Kenya is not even being spared either. And according to projections, the country is likely to run out of water by the year 2100. And the question is, what are we doing to conserve the little that we have? This week on Inside Government, we are joined by Water Sector Trust Fund CEO Ismail Shaia. We'll be discussing what some of the measures that we are putting in place to conserve water and ensure there is water even into the future. Hey.
How are you, sir?
Very well. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Very good.
Karibu.
Asante
Asante sana.
Very well.
Yes,
tell me this. I mean, we have had so many predictions, you know, that the country is likely to run out of water in about 5 decades' time, or we're likely to be running on a quarter of the capacity that we have. How bad is the water situation in the country?
well, considering that Kenya is, climate change has affected the whole world, and Kenya specifically, we're going to be a water-stressed country. Rumors has it that most of the corporate entities that are working and using the water, the worry is there that, you know, with how they're utilizing the water and the effect of climate change, we might be affected if we actually don't put mitigation measures in place and also put adaptation measures in place from the climate change effect. So it's a reality. We do receive enough rainwater at some point, but it's how we store that water and how we utilize it will make a huge difference in this country.
When you look at the amount of rain that we used to receive in the 1960s, vis-a-vis the amount of rain that we have been receiving, you know, in the last 1 year, I mean, there's no much difference. So who took our water?
The pattern has changed. You realize that it used to be every 5 years there's drought. Currently, actually it changed again to every 3 years there's drought. Right now, it's actually every 2 years there's drought. Well, I was in my village in December, and there's this grass when we were young boys we used to play with. When you pick part of the peak of that grass, we used to actually, you'll put it at your colleagues' ears and pop, it will have that pop sound. It's only that I realized that actually that pop sound, we used to expose the seed, we were exposing the seed of that grass. For the first time, we used to have droughts in this country, but that grass didn't used to grow. But with the long rains that we received last year, that grass was able to regenerate. So going back to that grass again, that pop sound was the seed. So when that seed is left, even if this year it rains a little bit, we are sure that that grass is going to grow.
There will be germination.
There will be regermination of that grass. But before, because of the consistent drought of for the 3 years or every other year, it didn't have that chance to grow. So we have a lot of hopes this year. You can see already the weather forecast, even as we speak today, that the weatherman said the whole of this month the rains are going to be above normal, which is a good thing. We thought that we received the rains way before from the ones that we received in December. We thought that hiyo tutakatwa. But apparently, with God's grace, that the rains are going to be normal, and I think farmers are going to farm. Hopefully, there'll be a lot of good productivity by the farmers, and actually also the pastoralists who will be able to at least fatten their animals right now and will be able to sell in good price.
We've still been receiving some good amount of rain. Where does all this water go to?
For forest cover, we need to do more. As a country, I think we are trying. I saw several ways, innovative ways that are coming up. The Ministry of Forestry is doing that. From us, from the water side, we are also doing our part with the RUAs. So there's a whole of government approach. You saw the president also planting trees with the Kenya Prison, with the army, you know, it takes a holistic approach to planting trees from different angles, institutions, at the village level. What are we doing? I mean, I've done my part in my village. I think when the rains were, we had WWF organized tree planting in my village with KDF, and we used the young men and women also from my village to also plant together. It was a sign of unity because KDF are now based in that part of the country where they are fighting with Al-Shabaab. So we used that opportunity to bring them back home and actually fill the community and work with them to plant trees. So for tree cover, Kenya, for us to achieve that 10%, we have done a little bit, but I think we can do more. You know, if there's a little amount of money that you're investing in something, ukipeana, hapa na pale, the impact will not be felt. So I think, just to answer your question, the forest cover, we're getting there, we can do more. And I believe in the slogan from the president that at least each one of us should take that initiative, because it takes as they say in the African proverb, it takes a whole village to raise a child. It takes all of us to fight that and also have Kenya, the glory of us having our forest cover to 10%. At least, the least thing that we should do as a country is that. Yes.
You know, we have been talking about, the dire situation that we are in when it comes to the water situation in this country, and we've been talking about this since the dialogue started way back in the first decade, or in the early decades, in the early years of 1990s, and still here we are, still saying that we still do not have enough water. What aren't we doing right?
Just to take you back, this is just 101 planning. For you to have a good plan, I think as a country, we need to plan well, for a start. How do you plan well? We need to come up with a master plan. Water is not something that you just say, I want a borehole there, I want a pan here. That's not how it works. Some of us, the way we were taught in class, up to the point of how to price water, the economics of water, the social economic aspect of water, the law of water, the science aspect of water. That way, we are not going to have a borehole by mistake. No, we plan for it. And if you do a master plan, you do a master plan for 25, 50 to 100 years. You will even can project what the number of population will be, how much that population will consume, how much will you need for agriculture. But the thinking of assuming that you can just cover the holes, that system will not work. As a country, we need to plan well. And to me, the planning has to start from the ground, at the county, sub-county level, ward level actually. Not even the sub-county, but the ward level. That will bring the county master plan. All the master plans of the county will become the national government master plan. Then we will know how many piping we will need. Is it a million plus? Do we need X number of storage capacity? That is how now the government will be distributing this. We will know if we are counting oranges, if we are counting tomatoes. That is how you will count. That is how the only way we'll be able to also to achieve as a country the SDG.
You are talking about a master plan, and we know that we have we have the Kenya National Water Master Plan.
Yes.
Which talks about ensuring that the whole country, we have a universal access to clean and safe water by the year 2030.
Yes.
The elephant in the room is in funding, because the whole master plan is expected to cost about 1.7 trillion Kenya shillings. And when you look at the exchequer funding, is about 600 billion shillings. And so the question is, are we going to achieve universal access to clean and safe water by that period, when you factor in the amount of money that as a government we are pumping into the water sector?
Out of that budget that you mentioned, 600 plus billion shillings per year, where the national government is giving the Ministry of Water 62 billion. Out of that, while we will require 100 plus billion per year. So we need to think outside the box, and always my clarion call to us government officials and also to Kenyans is this animal called treasury, imechoka. You can only milk a cow with all the priorities that exist. I want us to just think back. When we change to the system of county government, we have 47 governments within a government. No president has ever spearheaded that kind of a system. And these monies are going to all the counties. But it's now those 47 governors to say what is our priority. The national government is putting 62 billion. It's up to those counties now to also chip in for us to achieve that. We can do that. Another way to also look at it is also we need to come up with an innovative way of financing. I'll tell you one of the products that we have as a trust fund is result-based financing. We have done that in Nyeri, we have done that in Muranga, we have done that in Naivasha, we did it in Kisumu. Several projects that I can show you an example, where a water company, a WSP, will walk to a bank, present a bankable proposal. For example, I'll give you the one example of Nyeri. They took a 300 million loan to do a sewerage plant in Nyeri. When they did that, Nyeri County, we went in and gave them a subsidy. We agreed on specific milestones. Once they hit the milestone, we gave them 60% of that. The remainder of that balance, they have up to 7 to 8 years to pay back. That money came from the private sector. But we just incentivize it with the subsidy that we gave. So you can imagine now, that is the outside thinking that we need to bring to the table. The projects from that, and I'll give you a very good example of Embu, where they implemented a project. It was, I think, 98. They were the first people to access that money. And they said, when I was giving the check to the governor and also the MD of the water company and the chairman, I remember I said, he did not use the whole amount. I said, Engineer Karegendo, how come you did not use the whole amount? He said, it's a loan. I said, wow, now you are prudent. You're being prudent with the loan. He said, I have to. So that tells you even the thinking will change and how we do business. And I will urge Kenyans, at the end of the day, water is, or sanitation is a service delivery. And I always tell the governors what gives a county government or any government legitimacy is service delivery. So while we are discharging these services, we need to pay for it. Everywhere in the world, there's nowhere Treasury will only give a certain amount of money, but we need to recover. We are not there to make profit out of the water sector. You cannot make. It's a human right issue. But how much, even the price, the way it's set, you have to recover that infrastructure that you have put in place over the long term, so that way then you can also, do the same or repair the infrastructure that you have put in place. Yes.
The water availability per capita in this country is about 680 cubic meters. And we are being told that this is likely to fall to about 300. It's likely to fall by more than half. So what are we doing to ensure that we don't get there?
One thing that we are not doing very well as a country, forget about what we are talking about, access. What goes in must come out. The shit that we are removing, the food that we are eating, at the end of the day is ending up in the toilet. In the Western world, part of that same water is being recycled. We are not even there yet as a country. And I think we are refocusing right now to see how can we recover that water, that waste, kusafisha tena, so that we can bring it back to the cycle. I will give you a very good example. That water can be used in many ways, and it can save us a lot as a country. It can be used for agriculture, even if it's not direct. We can use it for drinking, but I can tell you, even without even to clean it up to the optimum point where you can say that you're recycling it, but there's a point where you can actually use it for irrigation. You can use it for, these car wash things that is happening through. The car wash entities in this country are using chlorinated water. Some of these young boys and ladies who are washing their Subarus and their pickups and the SUVs, they're using chlorinated water to wash their vehicles. To me, that is a crime against humanity. See now, but guess what though? Mimi na wewe tulikuwa tunatumia sabuni. Right now they're using shampoo, conditioner, something called, different elements that they're using to wash themselves. It's a high time. I was talking to Gideon Dambuki, Churchill, at one point, and he was telling me in his house, he has a timer, okay, where And that technology is around. You can actually put, and I always tell my kids, nani ameingia kwa bathroom, so and so, na hesabu. You know? That can change the attitude of how we do. You need to conserve that water. Mm-hmm. It's just not, just because it's there, it doesn't mean that we have to use it.
How do you convince people that we need to conserve water, at domestic level? Yet, we have floods in this country, and all this water, it end up in the Indian Ocean.
True. I am one, by the way, you're talking to a natural resource person, and I will tell you this. That water that is ending up in the ocean has a role, because if that water will not end up in the ocean, that marine ecosystem in itself will become so saline that some animals will not survive in that sea also. So it has, this is nature. The equation in nature will actually, if it's one in this side, it will be one on the other side. God has a way of doing his things, right?
But it doesn't have to end all of it.
True, we can conserve some of it, and I think as a country, we have the National Water Harvesting and Storage Institution through the Water Act 2016, which is actually now working on a bulk water storage capacity. For us, while I am specializing in the underserved, the poor areas in this country, every entity within the water sector has a role to play. WASREP is doing the regulation. How do you know and how much are you paying for water, for example, with your water bill in Nairobi? It's actually WASREP that is protecting you. That is the entity. WARMA will protect you also when somebody goes to the river and they want to kutoa maji. That is the entity that actually somebody has to go to. So we have the systems in place in this institution. We just need to, the compliance aspect. And it's self-discipline also. If you believe in the rule of law, it's not different from what you will be doing in the streets. So Kenyans need to understand that maji is there for a reason.
Tell me this, Shahir. Yes. I mean, you have a country whereby almost 50% of clean water is used for irrigation. And where you have water providers, almost 30% of the water they treat goes to waste through leakages and all this. Then how then do you first of all deal with the elephant in the room before you can go down to the small person down there who probably maybe the impact will not be as big as the two?
True. I will agree with you on that point, because this is like just telling a farmer that you are harvesting water. You have harvested your maize or whatever produce that they have produced, and half of it, before they take it to the granary, you have lost half of it. And it's, by the way, I think the last estimate that WASREP gave was 8 billion Kenya shillings per year. We are losing that through the leaking pipes. 8 billion shillings plus the cartels. Ethically now, you can imagine, if you see these water tankers running around in this country, you need to question that. Because they're the ones who are puncturing those pipes, and they're bringing you the water instead of you getting it in your house. So there's an entity that is fighting the water utilities. And you can imagine Nairobi, how big it is. How are they going to supervise the whole of Nairobi to make sure that a pipe has not leaked? Technology is there. It will require money to invest in it. Safaricom, actually, through their water clinic, is bringing that issue up, where you can actually see in your screen all the pipes running the water, and that's the kind of system that we are thinking hopefully our water companies will adopt down the line. It will take time, but governance is one other aspect, how we run our water companies in this country. So I agree with you that there's water that is being lost. That in itself is a huge issue, but at the same time, I believe the amount of money somebody is charged could even be reduced if we could be able to recover that water, for example. I'm not saying that it's being factored into the price, but if we were able to sell that 8 billion and it's going back to the water sector, you can imagine we can set specific price for the poor people, members among our communities, for example. The way water price is set, you set a certain cubic meter of water where you will say, this is a human right issue, and you can put a flat price on it.
You see, and it's good that you're bringing in the issue of human rights, and the Constitution of Kenya classifies water, as a human right. And so each and every individual in this country should have access to water. When you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 6, it also talks about access to water as a basic human right. Look at the Dublin Principles, of 1992. They all talk about ensuring that every person has access to clean water every day, 24 hours. As a country, we are planning to ensure that everybody has access to water by the year 2030. We are now in the year 2020. With the current prevailing water situation in the country, are we winking or are we whispering in the wind?
No, I mean, the government has put systems in place, and I can tell you that we have the structures in place, the legal framework. That's why you have these institutions, you have these water companies, and we are not doing badly enough, by the way. If we compare ourselves, I always say that as a country, we are better off than most of the countries in Africa because we have the systems in place. Can we do more? Yes. But we have also other competing priorities within, in a family. Even when you are budgeting, at your household level, when you budget, you will budget for school, you will budget for bills, you will budget for rent, you will budget for, all sorts of things. The government is also budgeting like that. Money is not there. It's not like we have the whole money in the world with us. So how can we prioritize? As you said, it's a human rights issue. We have many countries, because of just the structure that we have in place and the governance system that we have put in place as a country, most of the Eastern, Southern African countries are actually coming to benchmark with us as a country to come and see how we're doing. Last week, I was with the Ethiopian government, 5 regional governments from Ethiopia who came to benchmark with Kenya. I took them to Laikipia and Isiolo. That tells you that there are a lot of things that we're doing right. So much as we are saying that we are not there yet because of the resources, it doesn't mean that we are not doing a lot of things right. I think our governance structure, our legal framework, that is what is helping us as a country and where we are today.
When you look at the World Bank data, then it contradicts your position. Because, it says that in sub-Saharan Africa, the average water coverage is about 68%. If you compare this with Kenya, it's about 63%. So we are actually doing badly than the average sub-Saharan Africa. So what are we not doing right that we ought to do right?
Thank you. I agree with you, but if we started this conversation a while back, I'm not saying that we have a perfect system. Remember, we just talked about losing 50% of our water to the leaking pipes and the cartels. If that water was available, you can imagine the impact will be huge. So I'm not saying that we have a perfect family here, but what I'm saying is we have all the right ingredients there for us to achieve that SDG. I know we have not achieved the MDGs as a country, but the SDGs, we have every opportunity. I'm a very optimistic person. And I know the government plan for the water sector in Kenya. If we follow the master plan, we should be able to achieve that. There are several places, I can tell you, that the likes of Nyeri, Muranga, those areas, Embu, they are around 80, which is an average. But now, if you go down to these other parts of Kenya, the ASAL counties, that is where we're losing the points. So we need to bring them up. In fact, I was in a meeting today where the whole of UN approach, plus our government, are considering mapping out the whole of ASAL, 8 ASAL counties in Kenya. They want to map out what are the sources of water before we even do the investment. And that is how we need to look at the investment of the water sector. You need to know, what are you working with? Is it surface? Is it groundwater? How much? That way then when you build the infrastructure, you know how to go about it. So good planning, you are sure of, you believe in a theory of change. You can say that if I do X, I'm going to achieve Y. And I think as a country, if we know what we have and what we're working with, we know what the results that we're going to get.
Shaya, as we end up on this interview, tell me this, from where you sit, and that is the Water Sector Trust Fund, what is the way forward?
The way forward, I will say that we are coming up with innovative ways of financing the water sector in Kenya, where we are working with all our WSPs to see urban, by the way, urban Kenya, we're doing very well. I can say out of 100, 70% we have achieved what we wanted to achieve. Rural Kenya is where the difficulty is. Because you can imagine, if you look at the economy of scale, a village is on the other side, the other village on this other side. A water company has to pipe a long way to provide for 2 villages. You know, you don't have that, you cannot control the rural sprawl of how the villages are set up. So urban, we have figured it out. Rural, we are trying to figure out also how we're going to do that. And ideally, I always give the example of Nakuru. Nakuru has Nakuru urban, Nakuru rural. That water company is actually handling the rural part of Nakuru. So it's not stretching the credit rating of Nakuru Urban Water Company. So in most sides of Kenya, we're recommending that. Number 2, we need to fundraise. 3, we want governance. Governance is very important. Who's doing what? Beyond that, that transparency, accountability, how much money are you collecting? People need to pay for their water. I think training, building the capacity of those WSPs, employees, that whole approach will end up taking the water sector in Kenya very far. That way we'll all feel secured. And at the end of the day, when you sip this water, we don't have to take water, by the way, from this, because I remember growing up, we used to take straight from the tap. Why not? Why not? And as a country, if we have that vision and if we implement it, we can get there where 24 hours you can open your tap, open the tap, get your water and drink, and you're comfortable with that.
Very good. Shaya.
Thank you, sir.
Let's toast for a great future.
Thank you.
Keep on drinking.
I will.
Love your drink as well.
Asante sana.
Very good.
Thank you.
Love your drink as well. Conserve water for a better future. You have been watching Inside Government. We'll do this again on Thursday next week, same time, right here on KBC. My name is O'Brien. Enjoy your evening.